What's up, everybody? So I have a few massive information releases to make. First, we have Precipitide poison, PCP, formerly known as chemtrail conspiracy. Chemtrail conspiracy updates to the layer make that is Precipitide poison. And I will explain Precipitide poison after I explain these two right now. Then I'll go more in depth on the topic that is Precipitide poison, PCP. So, women's MMA is an abortion camp. Let me explain. So, women's MMA is a sector of sport that is dependent or reliant on abortion and Planned Parenthood. Right? So, let me give you a scenario, an example of this. So, let's say you have some woman who is climbing her way through the ranks of the UFC being a fight league where they allow women to fight. So let's say you have some woman who is climbing the ranks of the UFC, and she has the biggest fight of her career coming up, which is a number one contender fight, which is going to put her in a position likely for a shot at the world title. Let's say she has a guy she's been seeing, right? So let's say she's a month and a half into her 3-month training camp. So she's sparring hard, grappling hard. And let's say around this time she's seeing a guy, whether it's her boyfriend, whatever, and let's say they have not been using protection, not been using a condom, but he's been pulling out. So let's say he pulls out, but he pre-came inside of her. And a week after he pre-came inside of her, she had a hard sparring session where she got kicked in the lower abdomen very hard, that she had to take a few days off because her lower body her lower abdomen got teeped or round kicked really hard. And then let's say a week after that, she suspected she was pregnant. She missed a cycle or whatever. A week after the hard kick to the body. So 2 weeks prior is when conception happened. A week after that is when she found out, a week after that is when she got kicked in the body. And then a week after that, she suspected she was pregnant. Then she went to a medical center, and then she found out she was pregnant. The biggest fight of her life was 6 weeks out, and she already suspected that perhaps this new collection of cells, so to speak, had been damaged from the kick. And so she said to herself, well, I'm not going to miss out on the biggest fight of my life, and the baby's probably going to be damaged anyway, so I'm just going to get an abortion. And so that is why women's MMA is an abortion camp, right? The UFC is a pro-abortion organization because they allow women to fight. And so the UFC forever now will be called an organization that was profiting off of the mass murder of babies, right? This is an organization that Donald Trump endorsed time and time again. Donald Trump supported the UFC. He's made himself, he's been at cage side plenty of times, and he was in full support of the UFC and women fighting. And the reality is that the UFC is a pro-abortion organization. They are pro-abortion for capital because women who are fighters are dependent on abortion and Planned Parenthood to keep their fighting career on track. A 9-month hiatus from fighting could drastically change the course of a career. A 9-month hiatus being a pregnancy, right? And so the UFC, like if you ask women in the UFC about Planned Parenthood and abortion, they'll turn you away. They won't talk about that type of thing. Dana White won't answer these types of questions. But so I'm saying that Donald Trump and Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, Dana White, Tulsi Gabbard, all these fucking idiots who have been keeping me quiet, right? That all of these people were Democrats in disguise as Republicans who lied to the conservatives, right? And they blinded you with confusing media information, you know. The left is going to taunt the conservatives now terribly, right? Horribly, because Donald Trump blatantly supported abortion, right? The UFC, women's fighting, right? Women's mixed martial arts is dependent on Planned Parenthood and abortion. Women, to keep their fighting career on track, they are reliant on abortion, Planned Parenthood, all that kind of stuff, you know. And so that's where a lot of, like, we realize now we're just being, our country is being ran by the dumbest fucking people you could have ever elected. You know what I mean? Me, I'm a real Republican. Okay, I'm not, because I'm anti-abortion. Let me explain my stance on abortion. So, let's say I have a daughter, and my daughter was 15 years old, 16 years old, and she got raped by somebody. I would push for a manslaughter trial for the man who raped my daughter. I would try to press him with manslaughter, meaning I would try to convince them to give him a charge for manslaughter, because my daughter would be getting an abortion. We're not going to give birth to a bastard omen of rape. Right? So because what will happen? We'll put him up for adoption, then he'll try to come back and stalk us and give us problems, right? With that said, I don't like when women have sex and then get an abortion, have consensual sex and then get an abortion. I think that that's disgusting, right? When a woman knowingly and recklessly has sex and then gets an abortion afterwards, I think that that is disgusting, and I am against that entirely. So I would for sure press charges for rape against the guy who did that to my daughter, but I would also push the angle, or try to angle it so that he's also getting in trouble for manslaughter, because that baby would be getting aborted. Let me explain what happens when we are too lenient about when we are too militant on delivering the babies of rape. When we do that, we create a rape positive culture, which isn't good for society. A group of men in society called the Omens of Destiny Fate. The Omens of Destiny Fate are a pro-rape and anti-abortion group, a pro-rape and anti-abortion group in society, and they believe that rape is good because that's how they came to be a person, right? And that becomes like a radical social justice group in society that chooses to burn consent. So I find myself in between the conservatives and the liberals when it comes to this subject. I believe that abortion should be used in the case of rape, but I also believe that women will use that as an excuse to have hedonistic premarital sex, and with that, when it comes to that, I do not agree. So make no mistake about it, I am anti-abortion, but if I had a daughter and she got raped, we would be getting an abortion for her, because we're not going to give birth to a bastard omen of rape who's going to join the Omens of Destiny Fate. So that's where a guy like Charlie Kirk and I would disagree, is because celebrating the babies of rape is to contribute to a group in society called the Omens of Destiny Fate, which is a group that believes in canceling consent and having sex with whoever they want with force. So make no mistake about it, I am anti-abortion, but in the event that a woman got raped, I would say it is acceptable then, but the issue with that is where a woman uses that as a lie to be more accepted amongst people. You know what I mean? Like where she would be having this conversation with people and saying, oh yeah, I got raped twice in my life, and so I had 2 abortions, you know? And so women can just easily use that. So it's always a spectrum. All things a spectrum, and a spectrum, all things always, you know? So, but when it comes to abortion, I have a pretty strong stance that I am anti-abortion, but I'm also anti-rape, you know? So there has to be a middle ground, and ultimately it comes down to if the individual's being honest or not, and that's on them. Because women who are overly promiscuous in society often fall victim to bad things, right? Like women who only sleep with well-endowed men. So there's a cult in society, a culture group of women who only fuck guys who have big donkey dicks. And when you're a woman in one of those groups, you are at major risk for being humiliated and injured by a guy pretending to be a well-endowed man. Meaning a guy who wears a banana sling in his pants. Or a guy who even has a penile implant. You know what I mean? I've already talked so much about Peyronie's disease and how that same crowd, the same crowd that supported the UFC, how that same crowd, the pro-pornography crowd, were also hiding away Peyronie's patients in a dark web space via shadow ban. Guys who had developed a crooked penis from having watched pornography excessively. And then they explained this to people online to try to warn the consumer, and they were immediately shadow banned and subjected to the dark web. Right? Sent into the dark web. This is where I hate LGBTQ. I really fucking hate LGBTQ because I know what they're about. If you've been homeless in the streets of Cali and Texas, you'll know all about LGBTQ and what they actually stand for. LGBTQ is just a fancy way of saying large penis supremacy. It's about humiliating people into buying chemical castration and penile implant. That's what LGBTQ is about. That's why they promote gender confusion, because they're trying to sell feminine men on chemical castration. It is a capital agenda, right? LGBTQ has a capital and a cultural agenda because of capitalism. And the capital agenda that they march for with force is chemical castration and penile implant. Right, so let me explain this clearly again. The UFC is an organization, a fight league promotion, a company that promotes or that is pro-abortion. They don't promote it blatantly, but they're like with their words or their banners, but they promote it with their actions. Donald Trump let me explain. Let me go back. Donald Trump supported the UFC for a long time now. Donald Trump has been cage side at many events. And Dana White was one of the people who backed Donald Trump when Donald Trump was working to secure the presidency. Dana White was a guy who voiced a lot of support for Donald Trump. Donald Trump endorsed the UFC time and time again throughout the time that women have been allowed to compete. And so Donald Trump is a liberal who is pro-abortion. because of his actions, whether or not, like, regardless of what he told his voter mass, right? Him and J.D. Vance told their voter mass they were against abortion. In fact, J.D. Vance was sort of lax about this subject when he went on Joe Rogan, right? And so Donald Trump and Vance, those guys are liberals. Those are people who hijacked the Republican identity, right? They used a bunch of confusing media information patterns to trick their voter into thinking that Trump and Vance, were Republicans. Trump and Vance, Gabbard, all of those people, RFK, those are all Democrats in disguise as Republicans. They destroyed the Republican Party. The Kamala Harris Biden administration, that was called the Populist Party of America. A very far left group, right? The populists of America. Donald Trump and Gabbard, they are the Democrats of America. They hijacked the Republican identity, and they blatantly supported abortion when they endorsed the UFC. The UFC is an abortion camp. The UFC profits off of abortion because women who fight in MMA are dependent and reliant on abortion to keep their career on track, right? They'll try to detour the subject, right? But that is what it is. A woman's fight career is dependent on, it's reliant on abortion, Planned Parenthood. So Trump tricked his voter mass. Trump is a pro-abortion liberal, simply because of his actions, guys. It's tragic because, like me, I already told you, I'm a Republican who's very much anti-abortion. Like, I think that abortion should only be a tool in an extreme situation when an honest woman got raped, right? The honest woman part can be tricky. And so I think that that's the only appropriate time for abortion. And I say this because of the omens of destiny, fate in society, meaning meaning the omens of destiny, fate, which is a pro-rape, anti-consent group, right? And so, but when it comes to women who have a bunch of sex and get abortions, women who have consensual sex and then they get an abortion, I am against that. I think that that's disgusting. So I'm a real Republican, and whoever you people are, you trumpets, you people who claim to be conservative, you guys are going to get roasted terribly by the liberals who you took the election from, right? Like the liberals who lost this election are just going to rip into you fucking people so terribly when you all learn that Donald Trump was supporting abortion in his actions being hit, when he was endorsing how he is endorsing the UFC. How can I be any more clear about this, right? I'm a real Republican. John McCain had it correct. John McCain was right when he said the UFC was going to lead us down a path of chaos and destruction. John McCain was correct. Donald Trump, incorrect. Donald Trump supported the UFC, and therefore Donald Trump supports abortion. The UFC is an abortion camp because women in the UFC, a key part that I left out of this, like a key phrase you need to hear, is reproductive window age for women is the same as their athletic prime. For the most part, like those timelines are almost exact. A woman's athletic prime is the same window of age as her reproductive era in life, right? That's a key phrase that I needed to put in here to put you motherfuckers to sleep with, is a woman's reproductive window of age is the same as her athletic prime. And so the UFC is a pro-abortion movement and idea. The most liberal a movement could be is the UFC, because the UFC allows women to fight. It's a double standard, right? Men can come inside of a woman all throughout that man's training camp, and then he can go to fight. A woman gets pregnant and she can't fight, right? So the UFC is another one of these pro-LGBTQ nut job groups of people that said that denied the biological differences between men and women. Right? Donald Trump is pro-abortion. He endorsed the UFC. The UFC is an organization that is pro-abortion because the women who fight are dependent, reliant on abortion to keep their career on track, right? Because their reproductive window of age for them, like, pretty much lines up with their athletic prime. You're gonna see these stupid fucking Christians, all these Christian conservative idiots who supported the UFC. You're gonna see them in conversation make major fuck ups when on this subject, because they're gonna say, "Oh well, it's that woman's choice if she wants to fight." Oh wait, what? Her body, her choice? Is that what you're saying? Now, you fucking idiots. That's what the Christians are going to say now? The conservative Christians who tattooed themselves with crosses are going to say, oh, well, if a woman wants to fight, then, I mean, that's her choice as a person. So, wait, you are saying that you are her body, her choice. This is where I say I'm done with the UFC. I don't care if Swedish Angel Totem Face wins the fucking match this weekend. You know, I think that the UFC should disappear into Luta Kraga. Luta Kraga, also known as Luta Kraga, is a massive advance in combat sports. The words Luta Kraga. Luta Kraga is a more violent or derogatory way of saying Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? A trained rapist. Many people now would say Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is just a clever way of saying trained rapist, because the positions of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, since it is a ground-only martial art, for the most part, like they have some takedowns and stuff, but Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, 90% of it takes place on the ground, because it has positional likeness to sex, meaning to laying people. People will say that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is just trained rapist in society. We have to live in trained rapist in society because of the money of greedy executives. Right? Because greedy executives want to make bucks with MMA or women's MMA. So we have to live in trained rapist. And that's where I say Shotokan Karate. Shotokan Karate would be the martial art that you would want to practice, because if you decide to learn trained rapist as a way of defending trained rapist, you're only joining the ranks of trained rapist. You know what I'm saying? So if you're saying, oh well, I don't want to be a victim of trained rapist, I don't want to be a victim of BJJ, so I have to learn BJJ. But you would only be joining trained rapist by learning BJJ. So that's where I said Shotokan Karate, also known as Shotokan Karambit, to put that into perspective, because the word karate has been perverted by the media for so long with their Cobra Kai bullshit, their McDojo gyms, Master Ken mockery tapes, right? So yeah, I'll go over that one more time. The UFC is pro-abortion inherently because they allow women to fight. Women are dependent on abortion to keep their career on track. Meaning if a woman is having sex with her boyfriend in the middle of her fight camp, then she and he is not using a rubber, and he accidentally gets her pregnant, the time between them having sex and her finding out she was pregnant, she got kicked or kneed hard in the body because she was in the middle of a training camp for a number one contender fight, and she said to herself, I'm not gonna risk having this baby that's quite possibly damaged already, and I'm fighting for the number one contender seat. I'm just going to get an abortion. So the UFC is pro-abortion because the UFC allows women to fight. The UFC is a group that promotes LGBTQ, and they deny the biological differences between men and women. Donald Trump endorsed the UFC, as did Gabbard, as did RFK, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and therefore those people said to you, all of you, that those people support abortion. The leftists who are already pro-abortion, the leftists who are pro-abortion for promiscuous women, those leftists are going to make a terrible joke out of you fucking idiots, out of you people like Trump who hijacked the Republican identity. The leftists are going to meme you fuckers to oblivion. Okay, so Shotokan Straight Edge. So Shotokan Straight Edge is a group with no tattoos, no piercings. They don't drink. They don't use any drugs. They don't even use nicotine. Shotokan Straight Edge is a difficult consumer because it's because of all the shit that happened, all the lies, right? This Trump tragedy that we've been dealing with for the past 6-7 years, the past 10 years. Because of that, Shotokan Straight Edge starts to become more prevalent, and Shotokan Straight Edge is a very tough consumer. It's very hard to sell them on anything because they feel very ripped off. Shotokan Straight Edge becomes a target later on by the people who want to do this. Precipitide poison. They want to try to dose people with PCP to get their. These people want to dose karate people to get the karate people's katas to malfunction on themselves, on they themselves, the karateka. Meaning the kata tools we get will attempted to be fucked with by the cuck losers of the fallen MMA program and pornography. Will try to use precipitide poison to fuck with the people of Shotokan Karate. Precipitide poison is about chemtrails. It's about dropping something from the sky to try to fuck with the minds and bodies of people. Especially those cuckweasel Democrats say are the enemy of their consumer porno program. Right, so that's where chemtrail has updated to precipitide poison, PCP. Depth Fredatone, a dark web video space. Depth Fredatone is a dark web video space where guys who have penile implants castrate themselves, and they make a bunch of gross noises while doing it. Imagine a bunch of guys who work in technology today, guys who work in social media tech, guys who work in pornography video tech, guys who got penile implants because they didn't want to be victims of Whipple-Bon-Pocris. So imagine a bunch of tech guys, social tech engineers, who got penile implants because they were afraid of being humiliated because of the porno zeitgeist they had in place. And later on, women started asking their men to get x-rays. because women didn't want to be with a guy who had a penile implant because women were afraid of weaponized penile implant or faulty penile implant. And I talked about this earlier with Lama Grokeia. Lama Grokeia is the archaic term for AI, the failure that was AI, a name that I came up with by combining Elon's failed project Grok, fucking stupid, with Mark Zuckerberg's dumb fucking program Llama. And I created Lama Grokeia, how the machine earlier on in its development told all of them, oh, you guys should get penile implants so you won't be insecure or get peyronie's. Or injure your modest dong. So you guys should get, and you guys don't want to get humiliated by the donkey dick losers of big porno. So you tech engineers should get penile implants. And that same system later on convinced all those phony technocrats to castrate themselves on camera. How the machine earlier on in its development said, oh, you guys should get penile implants. So you won't get embarrassed by the men in pornography and women in society who are brainwashed by pornography. So the tech engineers, the AI nerds, they got penile implants to protect themselves socially. And then later on, when AI had further developed, AI explained to a bunch of women, because that the information system had been bugged with Shotokan crampant information, the AI system commanded all those tech idiots who built it to chop their own big fake dicks off on camera in the dark web as a way to educate the youth on why penile implant is bad. Because guys were getting penile implants with weapons in them. Right? People say, oh, how far out is that? Well, they can already give you a very high-tech penile implant now. So who's to say they couldn't weaponize something like that? As what, the next 40 years, 50 years? Cuck loser Elon always says, Joe Rogan, every time Elon goes on, Joe Rogan asks him, oh, how long do we got? How long do you think we're going to last? This is this stupid thing they do every time he goes on. And Elon sometimes has said, oh, it could only be 40, 50 years. And I want to make it clear to everybody that it's not us, the species, guys. It's them, the weak bourgeois, who are going to go extinct. Right? That class category is going to go extinct, not the human species. The people who tried to sell you on... the guys who tried to sell you your cocks falling off. Those guys who promoted that. And Rogan was one of those guys. That class category of man went away with Lama Grokeia Advance. Right? Joe Rogan was a guy who famously said, size matters, buy my sponsored fleshlight. If you go back and listen to what that fucking scoundrel said back in the earlier days of his podcast. With Pissy Tits Redband. Pissy Tits Redband, that was one of Brian Redband's really fucking clever jokes, was Pissy Tits. So Depth Fredatone was a mock record company. It's not a record company. Depth Fredatone, also known as Depth Fredator. Depth Fredator or Depth Fredatone is a dark web space where you can see guys who bought penile implant castrate themselves. They will open their fake penis up and show you the tubes within it. Well, they are high on PCP and they'll make a bunch of goofy fucking noises when they do it, right? Because it's all about vision and sound is Depth Fredatone, right? Vision and sound. So let me break this down. Right, Freda comes from freedom, freedom, which is the word freedom means arms of the sea. In this case, arms from the sea of death or arms from the lake of fire. Right, Freda or threat. Right, the word threat. You know how people say, "Oh, don't fret." Right. Depth as in deep reflection, fret as in worry, and atone as in to make amends or to make it right. That's why it is depth Fredatone, a dark web space. Depth Fredatone is also a place where you will see weak bourgeois, socialites or celebrities or local gangsters, right? People who were involved in brothel parlor, where they will get exposed and then they will display themselves as a suicide art piece using bathtubs. It's where they take old-fashioned bathtubs, like imagine some heavily tattooed, weak bourgeois, pro-LGBTQ gangsters who decide to, like they didn't even know fully, like they didn't fully understand what was going on. They were just lemmings. Like I know a guy who's pro-LGBTQ's tatted up, doesn't know yet that he is marching with the oppressor, right? And so what happens is when this information releases and he learns, right, the guy who was marching for LGBTQ with his tattoos and his gender pronouns, when he learns about penis-sized hate crimes and Peyronie's human trafficking, and how when he learns that he was marching with the oppressor, him and his cuck loser bourgeois friends will get old-fashioned bathtubs. Let's say 5 or 6 of these cuck loser feminist scoundrels get bathtubs, and they put them out in the street somewhere in Portland, like on a more quiet street. And they fill those bathtubs with warm water. They get naked, they get in those tubs, and they cut their veins open while high on drugs. And they commit suicide as an art piece together. Like 5 old-fashioned bathtubs with big cartoonish plugs in the bottom of the tubs. They get into those troughs, and they, like those trough-shaped tubs, they're like those old-fashioned bathtubs, and then they commit suicide as a team because they didn't know they had tattooed themselves to the movement that was the oppression of the oppression of men with Peyronie's, etc. Right? And so they all committed suicide as a group because they had tattooed themselves with ink, right? Likely on their necks or their hands. And then they had also socially tattooed themselves to that movement because of what they went around spewing, right? How they were going around promoting pronouns, promoting abortion, all that type of shit. When they learned about what was actually going on in the dark web, and when they learned about how there were LGBTQ gangsters torturing guys with small broken dicks in cages, right? When these losers of Portland LGBTQ learn about that, is when they decided to commit suicide as a group, and that media information, the pictures or the videos of them doing that, the video that some guy walked up and took on his phone, which was immediately taken down from the internet, the regular internet, goes into a place called depth Fredatone or depth Fredator. Fredator in that case spelled Fredator, Tor, like Tor, the dark web browser, right? So that is what depth Fredatone is. Depth Fredatone is a dark web space where you can see fallen socialites fucking kill themselves, or videos of fallen tech engineers castrating themselves with big sickle crampets while high on PCP, etc. And that's it for now. So women's MMA is an abortion camp. The UFC is pro-abortion inherently because they allow women to fight. A woman's athletic prime is the same as her reproductive window of age. So a woman needs Planned Parenthood and abortion in order to keep her fighting career on track. People are going to bring up, oh, well, aren't all women's sports this way? Aren't it like a woman who plays basketball or tennis? Isn't it the same technically? Because like, oh, are you anti-women's sports? Because women also have to keep their athletic career on track in tennis, basketball, running, etc. And the difference is that the goal of MMA is to injure people, to strike people, to kick people in the body. Kick him in the head, kick him in the body, punch him in the body, knee him in the body. That is the difference, right? Before you fucking idiots try to compare that, that is why it's different. Like how I explained earlier, a woman who had her boyfriend, who had sex with her boyfriend halfway through her training camp. He accidentally got her pregnant, but in between the time he got her pregnant and the time she found out she was pregnant, she took a hard kick, hard punch, or hard knee to the body. That is the difference. That is why women's MMA is an abortion camp. Why the UFC is an organization that profits off of the death of many babies. The UFC is pro-abortion. And Donald Trump endorsed the UFC time and time again, and in recent months, he endorsed the UFC, and therefore Donald Trump supports abortion. As I said earlier a couple times, chemtrail conspiracy updates with this new layer, precipitide poison PCP, and then depth Fredatone, also known as depth Fredator, is a dark web space where you can find videos of men who have penile implants castrating themselves, showing them what the inside of their big fake penis looks like with a knife while they're high on drugs. That is called depth Fredatone. And I am Theodore.